volví a encontrar. Soy así, ya es muy tarde para cambiar. Yo no espero nada, vivo sin rumbo. Solo quiero amar cada segundo. Soy aquel.
Welcome back, everybody, to the A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would love to welcome Julia Hoffman, based in Dallas, Texas, but serving clients nationwide, is determined to reshape the narrative around divorce and co-parenting. With a master's in marriage and family therapy and specialized training from Martha's Beck coaching program, Julia is committed to eradicating the stigma surrounding divorce and empowering divorcing parents to reimagine their family and discover the possibilities of a post-divorce life filled with joy and peace. Oh, I love the sound of that. As a proud mother alongside her wife, Christy, Julia shares in the joys and challenges of co-parenting their 4 daughters, whoa, with their dad and bonus mom. Welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lino. That sounded so good.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's your life, it's your energy.
You got a podcast voice. Well, I mean, coming from your voice. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. You know, I think it's really incredible. We were sharing before this. I mean, thank you so much for waiting. You know, my brother had passed, some months ago when you and I had originally scheduled this podcast. So thank you so much for your patience. And it's really no coincidence. I mean, that I'm seeing that you're in Dallas and my auntie's in Dallas. I think that's really incredible.
Yeah. And your mom born in San Jose, and you grew up Catholic.
Yeah.
Right?
I did. I grew up Catholic.
Same. 16 years of Catholic school. And
oh my goodness. So you also went to Catholic school, huh?
Yeah, all the way. Yeah, which is a great, I'll get into it.
We can get into it now, because as you're saying this, one thing that I'm thinking, and if it's okay for me to ask you, when did you come out as a lesbian?
Yeah. So 2000, the very beginning of 2019. So born in San Jose. We're actually just about the same age. I'm 6 months younger than you.
So you're 6 months younger than me. Wait, when's your birthday?
I'm April of 79. Right?
Okay, and I'm January of 80.
80.
So
4 months. I did the birthday.
Wow.
I didn't do the math right. 8 months. Okay, anyway. I'm older than you. But so I grew up in the 80s and went to Catholic school all the way through college. And I never saw, I didn't see any diversity. I mean, I had, in my 1st through 8th grade school, there was one Black student, right? Like there was one adopted student. It was just so white.
You grew up in San Jose?
Mm-hmm.
So it was super duper white and not diversified back then.
No, where I grew up. I mean, there are definitely parts that are more, but then it was very, very, segregated, different areas. And the area I was in was, white. And traditional families. My family was the only family where my parents were divorced. So they divorced when I was separated in 2nd grade, divorced in 4th grade. So my point is, I then went to all girls Catholic high school.
All girls? Holy moly.
All girls Catholic high school, and so I didn't see my life. Mm-hmm. I didn't see anyone that looked like what I really wanted, which I wanted to be a mother. That's like the job I wanted. When people would say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a mom. I'd said that since I was a little kid. And so I wanted to be a mom, but I didn't see any moms married to a mom. I didn't even know that it was possible.
Yeah.
So until I was 39 and met my wife, friends for 3 months, and then in an instant realized I was in love with her. And then my life went backwards, slow motion. And I was like, oh God, everything makes sense. It was like in an instant, everything made sense. But up until that point and before, I just thought I was really unhappy. I just thought there must be something wrong with me, sexually. I just I just didn't feel how I feel now, which is like myself, whole, complete.
And so you feel, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And so you were 39 when you met her.
Mm-hmm.
And so prior to that, because you didn't grow up diversified, can I say it that way? You didn't grow up
Yeah.
diversified.
I didn't grow up seeing different possibilities for how different families could be structured.
Sure. And so in not seeing that diversity or the way different families could be structured, you didn't
Mhm.
even know it was a possibility or even a chance or even a choice that you could fall in love with the same gender.
Yeah, correct. I I there was one point in high school. I mean, I knew what being gay. I mean, I wasn't like under a rock. I knew what being gay was. I knew what a lesbian was. And there was one time in high school where I remember crying to a friend saying, "Oh my God, what if I'm a lesbian? What if I'm a lesbian?" Like I was so upset about
Yeah.
being uncomfortable about going to some dance with a boy. And I used to throw up before because I'd have so much anxiety. And people would tell me, "It's just butterflies. It's just you're excited." My whole body, like, was rejecting it. And so it just wasn't anything that I could see. And also I knew that I knew it was, quote unquote, there had to be something wrong with it because the people that I knew weren't out. Like I had some teachers that I knew were gay or lesbian,
Yeah.
right, in high school and in college, but they weren't out. They couldn't be out. So that message is there's something shameful about that.
That is true. Yeah, if they're
It's
not saying
shameful.
anything about that and they're quiet about it,
Yeah.
what else is going on other than shame? So how is that going to even give you the green light to say anything even about even if you just had simple thoughts? It'd be really
Yeah.
difficult to even talk about that. Did you have like not even like a girlfriend, like a buddy that you could kind of just be like, "Hey, what if?"
No.
So strictly kept to yourself then.
Yeah. Well, it
Because of
wasn't even
that.
kept to this is what's just strange. It wasn't even kept to myself.
Mm.
There was really no awareness.
That makes
There
sense.
was no awareness. And I don't
Mhm.
know how, because I've had 1,000 people ask me, "How did you not know?"
Mhm.
So I like to say, I think I came out when I was ready to come out. Like
Yeah.
I had a lot of uh, similar to what you're talking about. My father had tons of physical disabilities, spastic paraplegia. My mom had incredibly difficult mental illness, in and out of psychiatric hospitals when I was growing up. And so, I had all these other things that I was navigating, and I met a really wonderful man when I was
Mhm.
23.
Mhm.
He was 24, and I still love him just the same way. My kid's dad, I still love him, but I just didn't have a concept of like what it was really supposed to feel like in my soul and in my body. Like
Mhm.
I don't know. How do you teach that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to teach that to my kids, but
Yeah.
without, yeah, I just didn't know. I don't know,
Yeah.
Lena.
I mean, it's
You
it's
did
I
you did you know?
I remember when I was a little kid, and for people tuning in for the first time, I lived the first 34 years of my life as a female, and I'm turning 45 in January. So I have about 11 years into this manhood transition in which I fully feel like a man. Whatever that
Mhm.
feels like, and what that feels like is just authentic to my nature. It's
Yeah,
the only thing I
you're
could
a man.
feel like. This is the energy that feels most authentic and true to myself.
Mhm.
And so I've always had this feeling since I was a little kid that I actually thought I was a boy. And even though my mother put me in a lot of little dresses and stuff, it just didn't occur to me. I was like, oh, I'm just a boy. And I was obsessed with Pinocchio as a little kid. Obsessed. I didn't know. I mean, he's going to be a real boy. I mean, even in my podcast room, I've got 4 Pinocchio puppets in here to this day. He's been
Wow.
an inspiration. He says, prove
Mhm.
yourself brave. And what did he say? Prove yourself brave and something. Oh, I forgot what he says, but it has something to do with being brave and someday you'll be a real boy. And I
Yeah.
remember that was like the line of Pinocchio. So as a little kid, I was always like, okay, if I'm brave, I'm gonna be a real boy one day. And I remember praying because I grew up Catholic. So I would pray on my hands and knees next to my bed and just be like, when I realized I wasn't a boy. I'll tell you when I realized I wasn't a boy. I realized I wasn't a boy. I mean, I am now, ladies and gentlemen, and people in between, they, them, all of them, just letting you know here, this is how it went down for me. So I went to Catholic school, and in Catholic school, girls had to wear dresses. No ifs, buts, or wins. You have to wear a dress. But boys get to wear corduroys and polo shirts. I was like, wow. So my brother
ugly plaid or something. Was it some ugly plaid?
Over here, at least, I mean, over here it wasn't a plaid. It was a like a cardigan sweater over a white polo shirt and corduroy
like a
pants.
Thing. Okay.
Yeah. The girls had the ugly plaid dress.
Yes. Got it.
Yeah, girls had the ugly plaid dress. And so I remember telling my mother one day, I was like, well, Ezekiel Jr., my brother, well, why does he get to wear pants? And she was like, because he's a boy. And I'm like, but I want to wear pants and a polo shirt. She says, you can't. You have to wear a dress. And I remember fighting with her. I would cry often. I don't want to wear a dress. I can't believe I have to. And I realized this is because I'm a girl. What? And I started realizing that there was a major division, that I couldn't be one of these boys. So I would cry every night, in bed, and I'd be praying to God, please God, make me a boy. Please God, make me a boy. Every night I would do it. And I'm like, if Mr. Geppetto wished for Pinocchio to be a real boy, then I'm wishing upon the star for one day for me to be a real boy. But I'll tell you that the energies and the universe did listen, because look at me now, and I've got a beautiful beard, and I'm just really grateful for it. I love this new energy that I'm able to really feel into my light. So
you're no boy, Leno, you're a man.
Thank you. I know. I love it. I love being a man. You know what's crazy? Sometimes I think
very good looking man at that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. Oh man, I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
But sometimes like I mentioned this to my students, because I'm out to my students. It's really important. I'm a doctor of psychology, and these students are all doctor level students. They have to know the truth. And some of them have read my book, so I better be telling the truth, So, and sometimes I tell them, I wonder sometimes, like, what is a full grown man? Because there's times when I see a 45-year-old man, and I'm like, I don't look like that, and people think I'm like 25 or 26. I'm like, well, thank you, genetics, that I look this young. But a lot of the times I'm like, well, in 10 years, I mean, has my body fully developed into a 45-year-old man? I don't think so. However, whenever I compare, obviously don't compare people. Do not compare yourself online, but I've done it. And when I've compared myself to other trans men, and I'm like, well, they've got 5 years and they look older than me, or they look buffer than me, or whatever. But one message that I want to tell people: do not compare yourself, because you have your own journey and your own energy. Yeah, I was in the hospital for over 12 years. I had a feeding tube. I didn't walk, all kinds of stuff. So it's like my body had to even catch up to even just wellness itself. So it's just really detrimental for people to compare themselves, and just love where you're at today. I mean, that's about me. I mean, that was a long-winded answer that I gave you there.
No. What is it for you when, like I was just thinking, what is it for you when people say, oh, I had no idea, or I didn't know? Because there's what is that for you to hear that?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, you can ask me this now, coming from a place of self-love, acceptance, and being in my authentic nature, and really being in a state of grace and bliss on a daily basis, honestly. But it took a lot to get here. Now, what that feels like for me, which I get often, and my students have said that to me, I would never know. And they have said, I'm sorry if that means, and I know that where their I'm sorry comes from, because there's a lot of other people that take offense to it.
Yeah.
But not to me, it's thank you so much, because it's hard work getting here. It's injecting myself with testosterone every week. It's making sure that I don't get thick red blood cells. My blood's being checked every 3 months. I work out 5 days a week. I mean, it's a lot of work to be in this new found body that I love. And so the fact that somebody can't notice or doesn't notice makes me feel that I could be even more comfortable and at ease with myself, without feeling threatened, without feeling divided, and without feeling judged. So it's a really comfortable place to be here. Thank you for that question.
Okay, good. And it's interesting to hear that obviously everybody feels differently about different kinds of responses or questions or
Yes. So you know what, Julia, I want to ask you the same thing, actually, because I remember back when I used to be a lesbian identified female, There were times where I only did this for my family, where I wore makeup. I did that for them, but behind doors, I was in baseball caps and I dressed like a boy. But in this female persona that I adapted in order to survive at the time, people would tell me, well, I would never guess that you were a lesbian. You're so pretty. I used to get that all the time. Do you get that?
I do. Well, underneath what you're saying to your listeners that maybe can't see is that I'm gorgeous, Lena.
Yeah.
This is what you're saying in so many words, right? But no, I get that, and I think part of it. What do I want to say about that? So my wife is. We talked about like we could pass, which means if somebody doesn't know what that means, it's like we can walk around in the world and not be identified as LGBTQ plus IA folks, right? And there's a privilege to that. There's a privilege to that. Like, I don't want it to be a privilege, but there is, where I don't have to feel unsafe.
It's a safety thing.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends and people that I know that feel unsafe just physically in the world because people look at them and have a certain opinion. Now for me, this is just who I am. It's always been who I am. I've always felt more comfortable. It's like I look exactly I look the same as I did before, except way better because I'm healthier and happier, and
you're living true to yourself,
and I'm in love, and I'm it's a different kind of energy. But I look the same, and there was a little part of me that felt judged, like, okay, if I'm gonna come out, I have to do something. I gotta cut my hair or wear some plaid flannel or something. I have to do, stereotypically.
Right.
And what I like to do, what my choice is to do, is to be with and affectionate around my wife, Christy, because that's what I want. That's how I am. I want to be the same way with her at home that I am. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely.
Not all the ways in public as
right,
but you know what I mean? I want to be, we have a great connection, sexual connection, and I like to be close to her, and I like to rub her back, and I like to kiss her in public. And so that's my way of like being visible.
Right.
That's my way of being visible, because that's my goal is I want, my kids are at the school where like many of the kids never even met a gay person. I mean, seriously. And so my goal is to not be, to just be myself and have them like come to the understanding that like, my kids have 3 moms now. And to have it just be, and I've had a lot of, sometimes kids ask questions and I love it. And we'll say like, how does Margaret have 3 moms? Isn't that so cool? Can you believe it? Have you ever met someone with 3 moms? I mean, really? Because I have a wife and her dad has a wife, and that's 1, 2, 3. But just talk to them like because that's what I would have wanted when I was younger.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so tell us more about what it's like being in the LGBTQ community in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah. 1 week before the election.
Can I ask that?
Yeah, of course you can. I mean, I feel just because it's by the way, your intro, which you didn't record, which I know was so beautiful about who you are as a person, and it really like got me, like it hit me someplace. So like I'm scared. I feel scared, and then I feel a little bit guilty for feeling scared, because I'm imagining that you must feel scared.
Well,
and maybe not. Maybe I'm making assumptions here, but there's so many visible signs of, and even, family members, family friends. There's so many visible signs of people voting against my family.
That's exactly what it feels like. It does feel that
That's
way.
what it feels like, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really been difficult, because it's really been difficult for me to wrap my head around. Yeah.
Oh
You?
yeah, definitely. Yeah, you know what? I just finished interviewing this woman on my podcast last week, and her name is Crystal Rosenkild Christensen, and she's a global psychic political advisor. Really
Mm,
incredible. She taps into the collective, and she's able to feel into different countries, the
mm-hmm,
political system and the energy. And so in this perfect timed podcast where she talks about where, the US was really founded on division. It wasn't founded on inclusion. And so a
mm-hmm,
lot of people are coming from a traumatized country. And a lot of people are voting based on trauma, not on peace and love.
mm-hmm.
So if we can all turn our minds around and say, hey, what do we really want in our hearts? We don't want to be separated. We want to be included. No matter who you are, everybody wants to be included.
Yeah,
Everybody matters. And to know
yeah,
that this is a really diverse country and that there's beauty in diversity. And if we
mm-hmm,
could tap into that beauty, we can start to include that we are all part of that beauty, no matter what color you are, no matter where you come from.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
in separating people, in dividing people, that's not one nation under God. He says indivisible and with justice for all. Indivisible means non-divided.
yeah,
You can go back to pledging allegiance from your heart and
mm-hmm,
not from trauma and
mm,
not from fear. Then people are going to be able to know that they matter and that fear doesn't need to be the dominant decision for what's going to be best for everybody in this country.
yeah, yeah. And fear of just getting to know, like, you and I as a human being.
Yes,
That
exactly.
is really, and I think I do a good job of it. It's something that I like to do. Like, when I was married to my then husband, uh, we had neighbors next door to us, incredibly conservative, 65 years old. We were really close to them. Um, and I came out, and I'll tell you, it was really interesting because we just, we still, we still cared about each other. Like, nothing changed. We just would make a little bit of jokes about, like, I think this was when Beto was running for Senate. And I think we make jokes about, like, he was going to put a sign pointing to my yard saying liberals, and I was going to put a sign in my yard saying deplorables. And we just thought that was the funniest thing. And we'd laugh about it, and we'd exchange, um, ideas about, like, this is what I heard and this is what I heard.
Mm.
And it was totally, we learned a lot from each other.
Yes,
I
yes,
just,
definitely.
I don't get why, I don't get why people can't do that. I don't get why people can't do more of that, because I disagreed with every one of their, policies or something that they're voting on, but I cared about them as humans. And
You know what? I really do feel that people do have the ability to change their mind and choose from the heart. It's just that
mhm,
having the awareness and the recognition that a lot of them are coming from a fear-based society. And
mhm,
fear is what's dominating their decision rather than love. So
yeah,
it's really that fear that's empowering them, and that's not powerful. That's actually
mhm,
disempowering.
mhm,
They would be a little bit more authentic if and coming from a loving, warm place if they're able to see that their power lies in their true voice and what they really want inside.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm doing okay. I'm just, hanging out, going to school, meeting my kids for lunch, and going to the grocery store, and doing all the, working, doing all the normal things. And it's just something that everyone, I think, is just feeling very intensely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
yeah.
And so you're an LMFT.
I am a MFT.
Oh, an
Not an L.
MFT. Oh, okay,
I don't
okay.
have
I
the,
thought it was I got you. Okay.
I'm not
So it was
licensed,
MFT.
and
That's
I'm always
okay.
very good about distinguishing that, because
Yeah.
so I've done just because we're like colleagues, I've done every single thing for licensure, the hours, the exam,
Yeah.
all the things,
Hmm.
except get the license. I moved from Washington here. And then when I opened up my practice and started working, I made the decision that I did not want to be licensed in a state
Sure.
that had beliefs and regulations and things that were against my values. That's
Absolutely
really what I did. So,
and that's being true to yourself.
yeah, I wasn't going to answer to them, but I respect and applaud anyone who is licensed because it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, it really does. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so MFT, and did you get your MFT before coming out or after coming
Yeah. I got
before
it
coming
by
out?
2009 in Seattle. Graduated
And
with
so
a
do you
master's.
work with LGBTQ community only, or do you work with the diverse population?
No, so I started working with women coming out like I had kids. I worked with families at their school in sort of it was like admissions assignment. It was a school for gifted kids. So I did a lot of like that kind of work and didn't do like my own practice until after I came out. And that was a really incredible experience. I started a group called Bloomers Society for women coming out later in life. And I
Oh, I
always
love
say,
that.
just to distinguish, I say women,
Mhm.
I just say women. And when I say women, I mean all women. So if you're a
Mhm.
woman, you belong.
Yeah.
If you identify, so it was for anyone who identifies themselves as a woman.
As a woman.
Yeah, and it was a really big group. I had retreats and we had a huge pride party my wife and I did, and just did a lot of work. And that was all sort of volunteer. I just kind of did that work. And then a little bit of a long story short, where I really realized my passion and what I have always been very interested in is relationships. I love navigating conflict between two people. I love helping people see the other person's perspective. So really couples work was what I loved. And I had so many beautiful couples where the woman was coming out and the husband um, needed help
Sure.
and feeling angry and having that be okay. And
Right.
she needed help, a lot of help with her guilt and shame. And so walking those couples through,
Mhm.
I shifted. This is where my heart is. I shifted over to helping families,
How do
navigating
you,
divorce.
and just in talking through this, how do you help a female male partnership
Hmm.
who the female is coming out as a lesbian? How
Hmm.
do you help the man feel not less of a man?
I,
Because I've heard this before. I've heard,
uh-huh.
I've met couples where this happened and the man
Hmm.
felt like I'm just not a man enough, or I'm
Hmm.
just, where they feel they did something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I don't help them. I don't help them feel that way. I do
Right.
help them feel and express whatever they're feeling, because
Right.
usually what happens is there's not an outlet for them because it
True.
feels so politically incorrect for them to
True.
have any kind of negative feelings about their wife coming out.
Right.
Right. So when I came
Mhm.
out, so I met my wife in AA, like
Mhm.
my second AA meeting ever. So one day at a time, but next month it'll be 6 years. So
Congratulations.
thank you so much. And
Mhm.
nobody do that purposely. Don't meet somebody in the rooms of AA. They really discourage it. But there was nothing I could do. Just fell in love. There's nothing I
Yeah.
could do.
Right. Right.
I didn't use coming out
Mhm.
as the reason why I was divorcing. I felt really protective of like um, that. To me, it felt like an excuse, which is a lot of internalized homophobia and a lot of right kind of that
Sure.
stuff. But I really wanted to own. I have figured things out. I figured things out because I met this person. I'm in love with this human being, and there's just no other. There's no other choice. The path is so clear. There's no other path. So I really tried to uh, let my husband have whatever feelings he wanted to have. So I have a
Right.
lot of empathy for men. I have a lot of empathy for husbands, and really try to get them comfortable that it's okay to be devastated.
Sure.
and
It's okay to
angry.
feel that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay to be devastated and angry.
Mm-hmm.
But tell me in a, yell that thing to me, as opposed to not wanting to say it to your wife, but getting into some kind of other fight or thing that's really not about that thing.
True.
So once, just helping them through that eventually gets them to the place where they do feel worthy
Exactly.
as a man, as
Yeah.
a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I love working with men. I mean, I can be, not all men are crass, but I love talking sex with men. I love the banter. I love
Yeah.
I just think it's I just think it's, the couples I work with are amazing. So anyway.
And so you also help navigate co-parenting, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What have you learned from co-parenting yourself, and how do you use the skills and the tools that you've learned from your home base with your clients?
Yeah. Um, so I was just thinking, your parents just divorced. So they don't, are you open about that?
About which part?
Your parents divorcing?
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah, my parents are
Oh,
divorced. Yeah.
okay. They just divorced. So it's interesting because I work with people with younger kids, but a lot of this applies to adult children as well.
Yeah, right. And you know what? I was actually gonna tell you about that because a lot of people work with divorced kids, but what about divorced adult
Mm-hmm.
kids?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't really see too much of that people working with. It's kind of like you're an adult now, figure it out type thing, and even me coming from the psychology field, and it's like I don't even see that being a thing where like it's a thing where adults need,
Oh,
to see a therapist or talk to a professional because their older parents divorced. But I mean,
oh,
let me tell you that it's been
oh, it's a
rough,
thing. Yeah, it's rough. I would imagine I haven't
Yeah.
experienced that from a parent. Both my parents passed away in just the past 2018 and 2020. But I experienced it from a child's perspective, and then I experienced it going through it as an adult. But there's a lot of things that come up. Uh,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that would come up for you, but I work with them on basically thinking about you, Dr.
Hmm.
Lino, right?
Yes.
At 40, almost 45.
Hmm.
And how do you want your son how do you want your son to be? How do you want your relationship with your son to be? How do you want your relationship if your son has children with your grandchildren to be?
Right. You
All
mean
the
my future
decisions,
son?
yeah, all the decisions you're making right now. Well, for you, for you, yes, future son, yes, but
Hmm.
I just say son for you. All those decisions affect that outcome, this
Oh yeah.
future outcome. And
Right.
so I really stress, I stress that, to think ahead. The main foundation that I work on is the shame that both people feel about the ending of their marriage and that they failed.
Yeah.
And if we could just not, I'm convinced of this, and I'm working very, very hard, to change the whole cultural narrative. Just a little, I have just a little goal to change the whole cultural narrative.
I love that little goal.
If we didn't see divorce as shameful,
Right.
people's behavior would be so different. And the
Absolutely.
only reason we see divorce as shameful is because it's just what people see.
Right.
It's just what they
And
see.
what's behind the shame that you mostly see?
It's behind the shame is really a sense of
Because you mentioned the word failure, like they feel like they failed at something.
they failed they failed their children.
Hmm.
They failed, I had a lot of guilt about failing my husband, with 15 years together. And a lot of great, beautiful years. It
Sure.
wasn't that it was all bad. But the failure um is it's so harmful, because you just go into like this spiral of I'm a bad person,
Oh
right?
yeah, right.
Everybody, how your parents are going to see you now, how your community is going to see you.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of lost dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of lost dreams. Like, this is the dream I had for my life, and now it's gone. And now what do I do? But again, I think if we normalized that divorce happens, and obviously people know the statistic, 50% of all marriages, right?
Yeah, which is
If
really high.
which is really fucking high. It's really
Hey,
high.
have you done the statistics? Is it just like that in the US, or I mean, is that just, that's a US
That's a good
statistic, right?
question.
It probably is a US statistic. Because I
That's a
wonder if
really
it's
good
like that in
question.
Europe or,
I don't know. Well, I do know that, like, the rates of marriage in other countries are,
Yeah.
I believe, in a lot of countries are lower. But don't quote me on that. I don't want to say facts that I
That's
don't.
fine.
I
Yeah,
really don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
I just know the states. And
sure.
um, so if it could be this thing where, like, I'm telling you, like, you and I are friends, and I mean, you're an evolved person, so you would say this anyway, but I tell you, I have news for you. We're getting he and I are getting a divorce. For people to respond, not, oh my God, what happened? I'm so sorry. I'm
Sure.
so sorry. That's awful. Oh, I
Yeah.
never liked him anyway. I actually had somebody incredibly close to me that said,
But this
I
is
need to
true.
tell
This is
you
how
now,
people react. This is
one of
so
my
true.
one of my closest friends, I never liked him. That's not helpful. For one,
That's
that's
not
not
helpful at all.
helpful. But two, if we could approach it as, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you told me. How are you doing? How are the
Mhm.
kids? How is
I
your
love that.
husband? Or wife? I mean, how, um what can I do? How can we support you? Can we all come over? You want to tell us all at the same people at the same time? Um, do you want to have I think there needs to be divorce ritual and celebration. I really think this is all a skewed mindset. And so I'll
It
speak
really
really
is.
quickly to the person that says, well, you're just encouraging it. If you normalize it, then it makes it okay.
Yes. Yes,
No,
definitely.
normalizing it does not make it okay. It just is
It just
okay.
is okay. Yeah.
Just is, because because there's no world, and I don't go into the Bible with people if that's their excuse, like, well, the Bible says. Well, then, you got to have a goat in a bath of milk and a stone in the eye, and I mean,
Right.
you know what I mean? So 16 years, I can Bible quote you verse for verse, and that I don't ever take that as a reason.
Sure.
And religion is a reason, yeah, but let's have the real root of religion is being kind to one
Yes, it
another,
really is.
treating each other as we wish to be treated. If you
Yeah.
can no longer do that in a marriage, the kindest thing to do is to let each other go in that romantic way
Mm-hmm.
and come together again in a parenting way. And that's what we have done. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that he has done the work. We've done the work parallel to each other, right? He's done his work, I've done my work. Our wives have done the work, and I'm incredibly grateful at I just feel I feel very lucky, and I want other people to. I don't want it to be. I don't want my luck to be luck. I want it to be just the norm.
Yes, definitely. And it can
Yeah,
be.
I
If
think it
that's
can
what you
be.
want, it can be. Yeah,
I think it
definitely.
can be. Okay, you say something now. I've been talking too much. You say
Not at all. I love it. I'm just questioning. So I'm wondering here where it's not always, amicable. So
yeah.
what kind of tips do you have for couples that are trying to co-parent and
Hmm.
one is being ruthless
Yeah.
or impossible or talking to the kid? 'Cause I've heard this, a lot of my friends, they're divorced, and I've heard stories where my husband's talking bad about me to my kids, and now my kids aren't, some of my friends, they've been separated from their kids because their kids now don't trust them based because of what the dad's saying, and it's like, holy moly, I can't believe that this is even happening. But I mean, what kind of tips can you give for parents to
Yeah.
not be separating your kids or making them choose, who's the angel and who's the devil?
Yeah. It's so destructive. It's
It's
really,
so destructive. It's
yeah.
so destructive.
So I have tons of tips on, like,
Yeah.
the best way to do drop off. You bring the kid to home instead of take your kid away from their home, right? You want to continue to say mom or dad instead of your mother or your father. I mean, I have all kinds of tips. I have a guide. I have a whole thing to help make it easier. But if people don't start, which is why I always start this with people, by acknowledging what their part was in the ending of their marriage, then then they're kind of fucked.
What do you mean by that? By acknowledging their part?
Because I believe that, and I should have said this at the beginning. I'm not talking about an abusive relationship. I'm not talking about really unhealthy or mental illness or any kind of abuse. I'm talking about two really hurt people that are hurting each other. Two just devastated people. So I just like to preface that there are some people that just you won't be able to work with them, and then that has to do with like just accepting that, and that's how the work we do. Sure. But it takes two people to get into a marriage, or more if that's what you like. But I generally work two people. It takes two people to get into a marriage. It takes two people to get out of a marriage. So I was in my marriage, I was the bad guy, right? I initiated it. I fell in love with someone else. It was, my fault that we were getting divorced. So in that scenario, the other person, if the other person is going to stay in that like victim space, right? The me person is going to stay in the like resentful place because well, you never did this and you didn't do right. You're never gonna get anywhere. So I think I tell people what was your contribution, and sometimes it stops them in their tracks, like they haven't even thought about it.
Right. Well, they haven't, especially if they're in this victim blame shame game. That's just a cycle, and in a circle they're continuing, and that's the narrative that keeps playing.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm pretty good at this stuff. I'm a pretty good communicator. I know this intellectually, but until I owned my part, which I was totally ashamed for my part. I mean, I was verbally abusive to him. I was angry all the time. I treated him like shit. I mean, not every moment of every day, but there's no way I would, my relationship now versus my relationship then, my marriage now versus then, you wouldn't even recognize me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I have I had such guilt about that. And really, so I wasn't like apologizing for meeting this person and falling in love and telling him 16 days later. It wasn't that. It was, I am so sorry that I treated you. I'm so sorry I treated you so poorly. I will not do that to you. I mean, I don't think I said this to him, but I did it in action. I was not going to treat him in our co-parenting marriage relationship how I did in our marriage. I was going to it's like a fresh start for me.
Yes.
And I think I treat him very, very well, with lots of love and respect, because it's the right thing to do, but it's good for our kids.
Yes, definitely. And that's also what you're demonstrating to your kids.
Yeah, it's good for our kids. The most hurtful thing that my parents did was, my mom did, was made me feel like I had to choose some kind of loyalty. And if I had some happiness when I was with my dad, that took away from her, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say something controversial. I think moms have a really difficult time seeing themselves as something other than a mom. And so because shared custody is hard. It's not like it's not easy. It's hard in the beginning, especially. So when you take away that major identity from someone, and especially then when you put someone else, once you talk about starting dating, a lot of our work has to do with when people start dating.
Oh yeah.
It's such a threat. But it just does not have to be. There's so much, your children have such capacity to love and be loved, and it doesn't need to be, but you need somebody to walk you need somebody to walk with you and kind of tell you like it is. And so that's what I try to do.
Yeah, and if you don't, your kids will.
Oh, they do. Boy, do they love it. especially our especially
Oh,
he and I their dad and I share 3 kids, and at the time they were 14 months, 5, and just turned 9 when we separated, so like a baby still.
wow.
And then Christy, my wife, has 1 daughter. She's had 28 in Oklahoma, and she wanted a baby, and long before it was like, you know, a thing to do, she had a donor and had herself a beautiful baby, and so I adopted.
Oh,
Uh,
I love that.
I
How
adopted her.
gorgeous.
So
How beautiful.
I have 4 girls, and then we
Wow.
co-parent the 3 together. Just to say that, yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. It is. Mm-hmm.
So it's really incredible. I mean, thanks so much for sharing like your story and your tips and everything. I've seen it, you know, I've seen the division when parents divorce and how the kids really the one parent's the good parent, one parent's the bad parent, and they're talking bad behind them. You could see it in their demeanor and their behaviors and the way that they act.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just rather than letting them choose from the heart, just don't even talk about your kids, you know, your kids parent. I mean, don't talk about the mom, don't talk about the dad. Just really make it about the child. You know, how's your day? What's going on? And
Yes.
so, and just to make sure that their routines and that their schooling and that the things are being consistent and not really being turmoiled with, or I'm sorry, tortured or pulled.
Mm-hmm.
Just giving them that consistency though, so that they have um, some stability.
Yes, and I'll add, if you can't talk about the other parent without, you know, seething resentment, you
Yeah.
know, then don't talk about them for that, you know. But
Mm.
once you do your work and you let go of some things, and I think it is really valuable to talk about that other parent in, like, we say dad and Aaron, you know, we say their names all the time because I think it's when kids feel like they have to keep this separate from this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're at my house does not mean that they don't have a dad and another mom,
Right.
right? And they don't have interactions. So I actually really try to say, like, oh, he's a teacher and football coach. Dad has a football game tomorrow, right? You and you're gonna go. Okay, and you want to bring a friend, right? Like I keep him in the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because I think he deserves to be, and also I would never want them to feel how I remember feeling, was that I couldn't speak my mother's name at my father and my
Right.
grandparents' house. If I even brought her up remotely, I could tell, even as a
Oh
small
yeah.
kid, I could tell the
Yeah. The whole
energy.
energy changes.
The whole energy
The
changed.
demeanor, body language, everything changes.
And one time I just
Mm.
exploded on my, you know, old school Italian grandfather and said, I just screamed and cried and said, it's like she's dead. It's like I can't talk about, it's like she's dead. And she's not dead.
Yeah.
So so um basically, in conclusion for my all these thoughts, this is going to take a lot of unlearning,
A lot of unlearning.
a lot of unlearning. People
Mm-hmm.
are going to have to uh this is about seeing this dynamic of divorce pretty much the same way for years and years, and about unlearning and thinking about, well, why do I actually believe that? Like, you know, you're talking about your friends, and it's some way the
Yeah.
interesting conversation, like, why why do you feel this way about your ex, or you really sound angry? What is the anger about, you know, 5 years out from divorce? Or
Yeah. Right.
it's just getting people to have any kind of understanding that it could be different.
Yeah, definitely. And almost always when you ask some of these questions, you end up seeing that it sometimes triggered an insecurity that was already brewing within them and kind of just brought out that insecurity even more. And
Oh
so,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Most of my work, ton of my work has been, and it's been really beautiful, around my relationship with his wife and parenting together. And she didn't have kids coming into the relationship, and I'm. It's been one of the most incredible experiences of my life to have this connection with a person who loves my children, her children, our children, how much she loves them, and to watch that and to support her in being their mom.
I love that.
Right? There's no, to me, there's I don't need a stamp that, of like they came out of
Right.
my body like that. That
Sure.
isn't important to me. What's important to me is that they know that they're loved
I
and
love this.
cherished, and that that the four of us are a team. Our text chain is Modern Family.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that
so they
show.
can't get away with anything because we all talk to each other. We all know things before, we
Yeah.
know everything. And also it's just so I'm just gonna call in on this. It's so freaking fun. It is fun. It's all these stressed out parents, right? It's stressful. It's really fun to parent with two other people and
Yeah.
share and switch. Because guess what? When
Sure.
you're with the kids at the Arboretum on Sunday and having a great time, you know what we were doing? Nothing.
Yeah, and that feels great. And that also gives you the
Napping. We
opportunity
were
to have time.
napping.
That also gives you the opportunity to have time for yourself as well.
Yes. Which
Yeah.
is why I'm so much of a better mom, because I was resentful, stressed out, tired mom before, and now I get to like rejuvenate and have that time for myself. So anyway, I just feel like I could just, I feel like I could talk and talk and talk and talk. I really, I want to ask you a question before we close. Of like,
Yeah.
I'm curious, just where did you? I know about, you've talked about fear, but a little less fear is such
Mhm.
a great title. So,
Thank you.
title for your book, title for your podcast.
Mhm.
Will you just explain that to me?
Sure. So to me, it came from living in hospitals for over 10 years of my life. And it seemed that every time I had a surgery, I had over 45 surgeries in 10 years. To this day, I haven't met anyone that's had that many. I'm probably close to 50 now. I mean, I just had one 2 months ago. And
Mm,
so it's or last month actually. So I know that surgeries are going to be a part of my life because I don't have a native bladder and there's always going to be something to maintain. And so when I was going through major operations, I always had some type of fear. And this is a fear that I hear from a lot of people when they're having their first operation or a second operation and they're so scared. And they're
mhm.
like, "Well, what if I don't wake up?" Which is what I've heard many times. I mean, what is your fear? I've asked them, "What's your fear with surgery?" Well, what if I don't wake up? I was like, okay, well, as every time I had that fear and I woke up the next day, I was like, hang on a minute. What if I just start letting go little by little, having a little less fear that I'm gonna wake up? How will my life change? And the way my life started changing by letting go of these tiny little fears, like every time I woke up, I realized that I had more to live for. And
Mm,
so in letting go of fear, I was able to allow in more love and receive it and
mm,
receive love from people, receive support, acknowledgement. And in doing that, I've been able to share my story and motivate people to keep going and to not be defined by fear, but not be defined by pain or their suffering because we're beyond that. We're a divine light and then we're all equal and we can all see each other that way. We're not going to see each other in the eyes of trauma. We're going to see each other in the eyes of our divine light. And
mm,
so that's where it came from. And then I keep it that way, and I love it. I mean, maybe my future book will be, a little more love or a lot more love. I don't know yet.
oh,
I'll think about it.
oh, so good. Well, I
Yeah.
will quote you. Um, I will quote you when I say it. But I love that. A little less fear. It's like, so with my families, it would be the terror that they feel in the beginning, the terror that they're going to ruin their children's life, the terror of how their life is, all of that. With each interaction and each, you know, change and each growth and each awareness, it's like a little bit less.
Yes.
A little bit less. Like fear is normal,
Sure.
but a little less fear, a little less fear. And then it's there. Eventually someone feels like they're on the other side of it. And they kind of look around like, oh my God, I think I made it out of there. And obviously there's still life problems and stuff happen, but you seem like you're on the other side, even though you still have challenges and you still have life things. And again, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother's passing, but each time you were able to have a little bit less.
Yeah, and you know what? I gotta say something on the subject of that with my brother, because I remember having as a kid fearing, what if, I lose my brother younger, my mother, father, or the whole fear of losing a loved one. And when it finally happens, it's really the way that you step up to the plate with unconditional love is really what's gonna take you closer to home. And so, I mean, I invite people to see the energy, to see things that most people call negative, and they see this nature of duality and really seeing it as sameness. And if people are able to see that all energy is the same, there's less judgment. There's nothing negative and there's nothing positive. It's just energy. It's the emotion that we give it. And if we're all made for love by love, then we're able to see that every emotion, including fear, is made for love. And if you can convert that feeling into love and see that we're all fearful for our life. When we're fearing is our life. Why? Because we innately love life. We innately want to be alive. And so if we're able to see, like, I have this desire to be alive and to be as full of life as I can be, then you're able to really kind of dissect fear and see that fear doesn't have control over you. It's really not bringing out the best in you and not highlighting who you are and your authentic signature.
Uh, uh, really last thing thank you. You just explained to me perfectly why I have said it, because it sounds strange, is that I used to be, I mean, a lot of people are afraid of dying, right? But I used to be, terrified of dying. Like I remember going to see the Catholic nun, Sister Dolores, in first grade because I was so afraid of dying. And I'm not anymore.
Great.
I'm not anymore. And I believe it's because I know what it feels like. I know what unconditional love feels like. I know what it feels like to receive it and to give it. I know what it feels like in my family. It's like I think I was so afraid because I think part of me thought, well, I'm never going to get whatever the top of the mountain was. I'm never going to get there. And how can I leave this life and not get there? And the top of the mountain is just me feeling like me.
That is the top of the mountain.
Yeah.
The top of the mountain is being in alignment with your true energy. That's the top of the mountain. And if you could keep riding that wave and going with the flow of life, you're always going to be on the top.
Yeah. Yeah. And always be a trust. It was just, I'm so glad to be connected to you. It was so
Thank you so much.
wonderful. It was worth the wait. I was always
Thank you.
like, oh, end of October, we get to do this. I just was looking forward to it. And, you were everything and more that I thought you would be. So
Thank you, Julia. Well, I have a poem that I'd like to share that I wrote dedicated to this episode.
You wrote it already?
Oh, yeah. I wrote it maybe like 15 minutes before we got on.
Oh my gosh. I thought you were going to do it afterwards. I can't wait to hear it. Okay, go for it.
Okay. It's called Rainbows.
Mm.
Within all the colors of a rainbow, you will find a difference in brightness, a comparison in shades, yet they don't conflict. Together they create a warm embrace, bursting through the clouds in a universal shape of unlimited love. Every color creates a harmony, and in these colors I sing a shared feeling of commonality and a hug for you from me. Yeah, that's it. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your rainbow light of love. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you. And I would love to connect again in the future.
Oh yeah, we're definitely staying connected. So where can our viewers and how can our viewers or watchers
yeah.
and listeners find you?
Yeah. That was so beautiful. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Julia.
Yes. JuliaHoffmanCoaching.com. 2 F's. HOFFMAN. Everything is there. And I'm here Usually people schedule something with me. I think on my website it says 20 minutes. I'm very good with boundaries, except for time boundaries. So 20 minutes goes way beyond that. So I'm pretty easy to reach, and just feel free to reach out to me. And I will be seeing, now that I'm following you, I'll be looking forward to seeing what you do, and let me know when A Little More Love comes out.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Julia Hoffman on A Little Less Fear podcast. You can find her at juliahoffmancoaching.com. Thank you so much for sharing your love and your light. And it's been really amazing connecting with you. Wishing you all the best, your loved ones and everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you for what you do too. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you.